Hello, scholars. Welcome to another science lesson. Today we are talking about metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. Our objective is, after this brief lesson, that you are able to describe the properties of metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. And there's a very specific reason why you need to be able to do this. So how do we determine what a substance is? Here's the reason we need to know those properties. Because the first thing you do when you have a substance that you don't know what it is, we observe and we test its properties. And we make a note. What is its density? How well does it conduct either light, heat, or electricity? Does it have reflectivity or shininess, also known as luster? How malleable is it? Can it bend without breaking? And if it can't, we call it brittle because it's not bendable. It's not malleable. Maybe buoyancy. And there's a whole lot of other properties that we observe and test for. But once we know what the properties of the mystery substance is, then we compare them to the properties of known substances. For example, metals, nonmetals, or metalloids. We compare what this substance we're wondering what it is to the properties of things we do know what they are. And then finally, then we can evaluate what type of substance it is based on the comparison of properties. And it's that simple. So let's look specifically at properties of metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. Now, metalloids is a new term for this year, and it really is basically also referred to as semi-metals. Let's look at this category of metals. Metals are generally have luster. That means they're shiny. They reflect light to some degree. Metals also have conductivity. They conduct energy, either light, heat, electricity, or a combination of them. Very good. And because of that, we use metals for our wires for electricity. We also know that metals are very malleable. They can bend without breaking. Think about an aluminum can from your soda. You can crush that can and it doesn't necessarily break. It is malleable. They can have magnetic properties. There's a few who don't, but most of them are attracted to magnetics. And finally, metals are always in the state of solid at room temperature. So these are some of the properties of metals. Now, by contrast, let's look at the properties of nonmetal. Instead of luster, they are dull in appearance. They don't reflect light. Instead of being a conductor of energy, they are not conductors. They make better insulators. And they are not malleable. They are what we call brittle. They will break easily if you try to bend them. So they are brittle. Most of them are not magnetic, and they may or may not be solid at room temperature. It just depends on what the conditions are. And finally, this category of metalloids or semi-metals, they do have luster and they do have some conductivity, just like metals. But look here, they're brittle, they're not malleable. And so they're more like a non-metal here. They are generally non-magnetic, so they have this property as well. So what you can see is the metalloids or semi-metals have some of the non-metal properties and some of the metal properties. And so if we have a substance that has some of both, then we're going to call them a semi-metal or a metalloid. And this is strictly how we use properties to identify and classify what a substance is. Look at this up here. Now, granted, you can't do a lot of tests on it from this slide, but you can see that it has luster. It is shiny, so it's going to either be a metal or a metalloid. We already can eliminate the idea that it's a non-metal. And this is how you would go through and try to identify an unknown substance based on its properties. That's why it's important to know the properties of metal, nonmetals, and metalloids. It will help you. So our objective today was to be able to describe the properties of metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. I'll see you next time.